Good morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, we're fighting PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, some call it the invisible wounds of combat, which can be painful and flare up after returning home. PTSD is recognized as a disorder with certain symptoms that can affect survivors not only of combat experience, but terrorist attacks, natural disasters, serious accidents, assault or abuse, or even sudden and major emotional losses. PTSD is associated with changes in brain function and structure. Now, according to one U.S. Army study, 1 in 8 service members who served in Iraq reported symptoms of PTSD. Some Veterans Administration experts estimated up to 20% and up to 30% of our Vietnam veterans were found to have PTSD. Service members and others can have a range of symptoms which could be overlooked or misdiagnosed. Demand, meantime, for PTSD treatment continues to grow. The number of diagnosed cases in the military jumped 50% in just the past year. Now, that's only the reported and diagnosed cases. It's believed that less than half of those with problems seek help. Now, according to the National Institute of Health, an estimated 8% of our U.S. population, that's more than 24 million people, equal to the population of Texas, have PTSD. Well, earlier this year, a group of 4 U.S. veterans made history by becoming the first all-veteran team to row across the Atlantic Ocean. That's right, row in the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. Among them, a Mobile native. Their goal, to raise awareness for combat veterans dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. Lee Peck has the story.
After nearly 2 months at sea, Team Fight or Die proves they have what it takes.
Woo!
Yeah! Taking the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge.
Give a big hand and make some noise.
They've become the first U.S. veteran team to row the Atlantic, more than 3,000 nautical miles.
Congratulations! Welcome to Antigua!
Welcomed by family and friends, they're glad to be back on land.
Fight or Die got in here today after 54 days, 9 hours, and 3 minutes.
From catastrophic weather to faulty equipment, they've kept each other in the game when faced with unforeseen obstacles.
Humor was a big player to get past the tough times because, you know, once that happens, the laughing starts, and then the rowing gets a little bit easier, the distance gets a little bit shorter, and the days get a little bit better.
Highlights along the way, the celestial nights where the sky meets the water and unbelievable up-close encounters.
And you're not going to be prepared for everything. You're truly not. But
and there's truly a lot of beauty. I mean, we saw a whale breach twice. I got to swim with a pack of bottlenose dolphins. We had gray whales, blue whales, a hammerhead shark following us, sea turtles.
It's a journey with a greater purpose. Veterans raising awareness for veterans dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder.
You know, we're here to help veterans through mental health issues, help them reintegrate and reestablish themselves, and we need to set an example that there's nothing you can't fight your way through.
being able to represent that in a positive way is you know, I mean, that's, if we can do that, then we're doing our job.
A job that's far from over.
Fight or Die is not going to stop rowing oceans until people stop taking their lives.
In Mobile.
That's right, Lee Peck reporting on that, and you heard them talk at the end there about continuing their mission. Veterans have volunteered and signed up and now are in training for the future Talisker Whiskey Challenges. And here this morning to talk about the Fight or Die mission and tackling PTSD, two members of the 2019 Fight or Die crew, U.S. military veterans John Fannin and Carl Christensen. And then joining us later in the program this morning as well, John Kilpatrick, Executive Director of Veterans Recovery Resources, and also a U.S. military veteran. Now, as we go to our break this morning, we hear from Dr. Trey Cole, a board-certified clinical psychologist at the University of Denver. He's also a U.S. military veteran, and he's working with Fight or Die, looking for answers and seeking solutions to PTSD.
Obviously, there's a lot of hardship that comes with military service, and one of the things about this project that feels particularly important is that it can mirror some of that hardship. Rowing across the ocean is no easy task, obviously, not something that I personally would want to do. So I think in some ways trying to mirror some of that hardship, but do it in a way that has a different result. So a lot of people sometimes have better or worse experiences in the military. They get out, sometimes have difficulty with that transition. Those are big hardships, and so I think one of the things about Fight or Die that makes it such a great collaboration project is that people can experience a hardship in sort of a crucible, and then they can do something different with it. And part of our intervention work around that is trying to help that be a better experience so that they can connect with one another and ultimately have a sort of a corrective experience with that hardship.
And as mentioned here this morning to talk about the Fight or Die mission and tackling PTSD, two members of the 2019 Fight or Die crew, U.S. military veterans John Fannin and Carl Christensen. John is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran and Carl is a U.S. Navy veteran. And we thank you both for joining us this morning because you guys are in the midst of training, preparing for the row coming up in December. First, tell us why. Why did you decide to do this, John?
This is kind of my Everest. As a Marine, I always wanted to be an amphibious warrior, and I got stationed in 29 Palms and then went to Ramadi, Iraq in the middle of the desert. So my time in the Marine Corps was desert to desert to desert to desert. And so I've never been on the big seas, and I very much strongly believe in personal growth after PTSD. Former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said he also believes in post-traumatic stress development. And so part of doing this, I admitted to the team last night, and I'll admit for all the viewers that I'm terrified of the open sea. I've never been out there, and hearing about, you know, the big swells and stuff, like it terrifies me, and it's just kind of my challenge. I'm like, I'm gonna beat this, and I want to beat this to show others that you can beat whatever your Everest is.
Now, you have rowed the Gulf of Mexico, though, just staying close to the coast, or what?
A little bit. When I was in college, I took a kayak down to Corpus Christi and Mustang Island, and I took my kayak out about like maybe a mile offshore, and that was fun, and I really enjoyed it. I've always really enjoyed the water, so I did that a little bit, and then this I was like, well, this is a lot bigger, so, you know.
Bigger pool.
Yeah, much bigger pool, much bigger pool.
Carl, let's throw it in your lap. What made you make that decision to volunteer to take on the challenge?
My decision was I needed to continue to serve. So after I moved back home, I needed a route to continue to serve because I think I got out of the Navy a little early. So I joined the local search and rescue. So I'm a current member of our Park County Search and Rescue. It wasn't quite enough, and I became aware of Fight or Die, and I needed to help out some veterans, and I believe that I can be a good example, and I'm going to go through this hardship and serve my fellow veterans.
Now, you probably have some beautiful rivers and lakes in Wyoming, but you're a far piece away from the open sea as well.
That is correct. We don't have any real big lakes.
No,
so,
okay.
But then again, Fight or Die is based out of Denver, so we have crew members that are based out of landlocked states. So we'll get her done.
When you look at the challenge, a lot of you can feel the adrenaline pump and rush from seeing the guys making it to Antigua. What did that make you feel like when you saw that piece?
Really proud. There are a lot of veteran service organizations, and they all do something, but to see the uniqueness of what Fight or Die was doing, I was just like, wow, man, this is, I believe very strongly in being proactive and not reactive to your circumstances. I feel like this was very proactive, especially with our strategic partners, you know, Marcus Institute of Brain Health, and you heard from the guys at Denver University as well. This is a very proactive, kind of taking control of your own life measure to help, and I believe very strongly in that as kind of a personal ethos as well as our organization ethos.
Carl, what kind of feeling did you get? Because I mean, I'm not even involved, and it really got me pumped up over there watching it and hearing it, and you said you wanted to help veterans, so how did it affect you?
I get kind of emotional with that type of stuff. It really affects me pretty deep. I just want to maintain a positive example. I want to show everybody else that they can do great things, maybe not row an ocean, but they can row their own metaphorical ocean. So I'm keyed up for just being a good example. So That's where I'm at.
What did you think about some of the things that they mentioned, some of the side benefits of that rowing adventure, the whales and the dolphins and the sea turtles?
I am super excited for that. I love taking in everything in my environment. Back home, I do a lot of backpacking. I just like getting out and experiencing what the world has, and so this will just be another experience. My background in the ocean was in a steel tube that was underneath the water as a submarine officer, so
right.
I didn't really get to experience a whole lot of that, so this will be a new experience as well. And just live life, get experiences, makes you a better person.
That's awesome, a submariner. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to hear more from both John and Carl. And right now, we're going to taking us to that break, as we mentioned, University of Denver board-certified clinical psychologist and also a U.S. Army veteran, Dr. Trey Cole, sharing about his work in Mobile and the future work with the 2019 Fight or Die crew.
Well, today we've done the assessment portion of meeting with the guys. So really a lot of this has been relationship building, showing the guys that we're actually part of the process with them in some way. And obviously, I think later we're going to actually go out and do some rowing with them to see what that looks like. But I think it's really essential, especially in these types of community, whether it's veterans or law enforcement or those types of groups, first responders, that you show that you can actually have some heartbeat with them in that process. And that's important to build that trust, because then, I think the interventions end up then being more effective because they're adopted more easily in that process.
It's exciting to be here, to be working with this crew. I've developed a relationship with the Fight or Die organization for a little over a year and a half now, and it's been really meaningful working with the veterans who are really passionate about either giving back to the research community or the veteran community, and really building awareness for not only veteran mental health, but also for veterans really picking up their lives and doing something that I think it's a really unique twist away from really what is in media right now, which is PTSD and suicide and substance abuse and big issues in veteran mental health. But also the Fight or Die organization is doing something unique in that they're really putting a perspective on mental health from a performance and an excellence lens that you really don't see a lot in the media. So my involvement at this organization has just been really fruitful and meaningful because I think they're really doing something unique in that.
And welcome back. This morning we're talking to two of the crew members for the 2019 Fight or Die mission, and they're also a part of tackling that PTSD issue. We're talking to Marine Corps veteran John Fannin and our U.S. Navy veteran Carl Christensen. Guys, when you hear the information as the doctors are participating with providing some of the type of expertise and counseling for you to tackle those challenges, why did you think that this would be something good to do to address PTSD? And I love that new meaning of the D word.
Yeah, I think there's always place for knowledge. Whether you find it beneficial or not, I think your mind expands with it. And so anything that you can pick up and learn, maybe it's not applicable to you right now, but maybe it's something you could pass on to a friend, or maybe it's something that in 10 years you'll be like, hey, this is a good piece of information to have now. So anytime that you can get your hands on some new knowledge, one of last year's crew members was talking with us last night about the growth mindset, and it's anytime you go to a class, even if you're really experienced in something, pretending like you don't know anything. So you can soak up all the information that person has, because even if you know most of what they have, you might miss 1% of what they have that might be really important because you're tuned out thinking, well, I know it all already. And so just having that open mind towards the DU guys, and they did bring a lot of stuff that I kind of had a very shallow understanding of, and just they took it a lot deeper. And so it was very much of benefit to me for sure.
Carl, when you think about the challenge of addressing PTSD, what are you looking forward to in this Fight or Die challenge to be a benefit for you?
With regard to fighting PTSD, once again, with the experience mindset and being a positive example, I want to make sure I'm a good example and show people that they can get out, do things, and through that, I believe there's a lot of growth, internal growth. And so if they can get out, do a new experience, absorb it, take it in. They might find a new love in their life that helps take their mind off stuff. But if you just sit at home, or you have your own demons that you're fighting, if you do the same thing always, you never change. So if you can get out, get active, do something new, try and just pique curiosity. You might do something not like it, might do something not like it, then light bulb. You'd find something that becomes your new passion, and it helps you just move on.
You know, the isolation factor is one of the concerns of a lot of the men and women who are dealing with PTSD, getting them to move beyond that. In your time of addressing the PTSD issue, have you learned some ideas of how maybe to reach some of the guys and girls to get them to step beyond where they are and to talk about it, to let people know that they need to have this addressed?
I think, and this is something we talked about last night too, is as veterans, and we can deny it all we want, but there's a lot of pride, and it's very hard to own up to our own deficiencies, and we don't want to put it out there because we don't want to be looked at as the weak link in the team and stuff. But there's a very strange strength that comes when you're like, you know what, this is where I'm deficient in, and I'll own that, because the only way that I can get better is by owning it and realizing that it's there. You know, aggressiveness and hostility and bad things all happen when we refuse to acknowledge the reality of what's going on in our situation. And so just giving people, I don't want to say the cliche term a safe space, but making sure that they understand that, you know, there's not going to be a lot of judgment when they say like, hey, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm feeling, because everybody's a little bit different, and making sure that's like, it's all right, man, like we all been through that, because I think we share some of those experiences, and they think they're alone in those experiences, and when we say it and then they own up to it, and then everybody else goes, yeah, we've been through that too. There's that community again, there's that brotherhood and that tribe mentality again, that we're all in this together, and it kind of strengthens the bond.
All right. Well, we're going to go to a break again, and when we come back, we'll also be talking more along with John Kilpatrick joining us. Meantime, we're going to hear from Ethan Banner again. Now, he's a doctoral student in the University of Denver's Stern Specialty in Military Psychology program. His future plans include serving in the U.S. Air Force and working with active duty personnel.
But what we're really developing here, I think, is an amazing platform and a base to really build on, you know, an area of research that really is untapped and really hasn't really been focused on too much. So we're at a unique place where we can really study not only ocean rowing, but also the impact that something like an expedition like this has on the veteran population and individuals. So as we gather our assessment of these individuals, we'll be able to see, okay, so John has this experience and Luke has this experience. How has this journey been different for each of them? And what has that been like for them as veterans? And what does that mean? And how does this expedition and this journey really make an impact on how they go forward with their life in the future?
So after this training camp, then what will happen is each one of our students is paired with one of the Fight or Die team members, and they'll be meeting with them monthly to go over some of the interventions that are trained here at the training camp as part of our psychological intervention. And then we will try to join them as well when they sail off and set off in the Canary Islands, and have some FaceTime with them at that point, and then try to meet them also at the end of the race in Antigua to do some debriefing after that.
And welcome back this morning. We're joined now by the U.S. Marine Corps veteran John Fannin, as we mentioned, as well as U.S. Navy veteran Carl Christensen, as well as John Kilpatrick, Executive Director of Veterans Recovery Resources. John is also a U.S. military, Marine Corps, and Army veteran, and we thank you for joining us. But one of the things we wanted you here because of your organization, you said veterans helping veterans. You saw a need and created a program to help our guys and girls who are coming back dealing with different challenges. But this morning we're talking about PTSD. Tell us, why was it necessary, you think, to promote that veterans helping veterans? Does that open the door for many of the people who
Yeah, I think it does,
help?
and I'm not sure if it was Carl or John that talked about it, but you know, there's something really powerful when, you know, we don't like to ask for help. We're very proud, like somebody said. And when we do, we've kind of reached the end of our rope because we like to be pretty self-sufficient. But when it comes to trauma, everybody thinks they're alone and that nobody else has experienced it, and so we're embarrassed. I mean, all that pride stuff comes in. But when we get to the end of the line and we ask for help, it is so powerful when the guy or girl you're talking to says, I understand, I've been there too. And suddenly the walls come down and all of those defenses come down, and that's where the healing starts. And so it's, for us, we think we're special. The very small percentage of our population serves in the military, even fewer combat veterans. Right. And combat trauma is pretty unique, and so, we all get it, but like he and I may be in the same experience and come away with two very different trauma experiences. And so, how we process it, goes back to how we were raised. There's so many factors, and so each person's trauma experience is different. And so, getting to that work is really difficult. And so a lot of us, turn to drugs and alcohol and other unhealthy behaviors to cope with it. And when you can connect with another veteran or another person that's been where you are, there's just some real strength and power in that.
And so how is your organization there to be a stopgap, really, what you're making sure somebody has someone to go to talk to?
Sure. So we do a lot of things. One, the bulk of our staff are veterans or they're clinical professionals like Dr. Cole who specialize in caring for veterans. And so we meet veterans where they are. So however they show up to us, that's where we meet them, and then we try to connect them with a peer who's been through what they've been through. And so even when a clinical intervention is required, you've got the peer there saying, hey man, I know this sounds silly, it sounds like you don't want to do it, just do it. I did it and it worked for me. And so you get that kind of personal testimony that it works, and these clinical interventions work, but it's difficult work to do, and so we practice in our clinic what we call trauma-informed care, and so everybody from our primary care doctors to our physical therapists, everybody comes to the table with what we call a trauma-informed care, and so a veteran who's coming to us for primary care may get a good bit of mental health care from a PA who might be dealing with his blood pressure. So I don't like the D in PTSD. I don't think we're disordered. We experience things in the world that we ought not have to see, right. And we do things that we ought not have to do, and it just violates our moral code, and that produces trauma.
And John, I love what was the new term we use for the D now?
Development. Post-traumatic stress development.
That's got rid of the D altogether.
Right.
I like post-traumatic growth.
There we go.
It's when we get to the root of it, it really does make us who we are, and it can make us better than we were.
Well, we're going to close out on that note. I thank you all for being a part of this, Carl, John, and John, and got more information coming up for you on screen there. We thank you as well for joining us this week on Perspectives, as we attempt to discuss important issues and seek solutions. If you have any ideas, drop it to us. I'm Eric Reynolds. We will see you next week.